Living under a false identity for 3 years had taught me that the hardest part of witness protection wasn't hiding from dangerous criminals. It was pretending to be someone else around the people who thought they knew me best. My family believed I was Sarah Chin, a 29-year-old data analyst who worked remotely for a boring tech company in Seattle. They had no idea that Sarah Chin was a carefully constructed federal identity created to protect Rebecca Martinez, the former financial analyst whose testimony had destroyed a $2.8 billion money laundering operation run by the Kozlov crime family. The real me had spent 4 years working at Meridian Investment Partners, gradually uncovering evidence that the firm was being used to wash money for Russian organized crime. When I'd finally gathered enough evidence to bring to federal authorities, my life had changed overnight. One day I was Rebecca Martinez, ambitious financial analyst with a corner office in Manhattan. The next day I was a federal witness under 24-hour protection, watching my former colleagues get arrested on RICO charges while the Kozlov family put a $5 million bounty on my head. The U.S. Marshals had relocated me to Portland under the WITSEC program, complete with a new social security number, fabricated employment history, and strict protocols designed to keep me alive until the federal trials concluded. My handler, Deputy Marshal James Morrison, had made the rules crystal clear. No contact with anyone from my previous life, no social media presence, no activities that might draw attention, and absolutely no financial transactions that could be traced back to my real identity. For 3 years I'd followed those rules religiously. I lived in a modest apartment, drove a used Honda, worked my fake remote job, and gradually built relationships with my new family, Mom's sister Janet and her kids, who had been told I was their long-lost cousin Sarah, finally reconnecting after years of estrangement. Janet Chin had welcomed me with open arms, thrilled to have another family member nearby. Her daughter Lisa, my supposed sister, had been excited to have a successful older cousin to look up to. Even Janet's mother, who everyone called Grandma Chin, had accepted me as part of the family without question. They had no idea that their loving cousin Sarah was actually a federal witness whose real family believed she was dead, killed in a car accident that the Marshals had staged to throw the Kozlov family off her trail. Rebecca Martinez's funeral had been attended by hundreds of mourners, while Sarah Chin quietly started her new life 3,000 miles away. The financial restrictions of witness protection were particularly challenging for someone with my background. Before WITSEC, I'd managed multi-million-dollar investment portfolios and lived comfortably on a 6-figure salary. Now I was limited to the modest income from my fake remote job and a carefully monitored bank account that couldn't show any unusual activity. The Marshals had been clear about the importance of maintaining a consistent financial profile. Sarah Chin was supposed to be a struggling data analyst living paycheck to paycheck, not someone with access to significant resources. Any deviation from that pattern could trigger alerts that might expose my location to the very people trying to kill me. My family had interpreted my modest lifestyle as evidence that I was struggling financially. They'd started small, offering to pay for dinners or covering my share of group activities. I'd tried to decline gracefully, but refusing their generosity too often would have seemed suspicious. "You work so hard, Sarah," Mom would say during family gatherings. "You should let us help you enjoy life a little more." "I'm fine really," I'd always respond. "I'm just careful with money." "Too careful," Lisa would add. "You never buy yourself anything nice. When's the last time you got new clothes or went on a vacation?" I couldn't explain that new clothes and vacations weren't priorities when you were hiding from a Russian crime family that had already murdered 2 other witnesses who'd testified against them. Instead, I'd smile and deflect, maintaining the fiction that I was just naturally frugal. The credit card situation had started 6 months ago when Mom had asked to borrow my cards for an emergency. Dad's medical bills from his heart surgery had maxed out their credit lines, and they needed to pay for prescription medications that weren't covered by insurance. "Just until our next payday," Mom had promised. "We'll pay you back immediately." I'd reluctantly handed over 2 credit cards, knowing that refusing would raise questions about why I was so protective of my financial information. The Marshals had set up the cards with reasonable limits, $5,000 and $3,000 respectively, as part of my Sarah Chin cover identity. Mom had used the cards for Dad's medications and paid them off within 2 weeks, just as she'd promised. But she'd also kept copies of the card information, telling me it was just in case of another emergency. "Your family, Sarah," she'd said. "We look out for each other." Over the next few months, There had been several more emergencies. Car repairs when Dad's truck broke down. Emergency vet bills when Grandma Chen's cat needed surgery. Lisa's textbooks when her financial aid was delayed. Each time Mom had asked permission and each time, she'd paid the money back within a few weeks. I'd started to relax about the arrangement, thinking that maybe this small deviation from protocol wouldn't be noticed by the federal monitoring systems. After all, the amounts were small and they were always paid back promptly. How much attention could the marshals really be paying to minor credit card activity? That assumption had been my first mistake. My second mistake had been underestimating Mom's growing sense of entitlement about what she called our family resources. As the emergency borrowing became more routine, Mom had started to view my credit cards as a shared family asset rather than my personal financial instruments. "We're all in this together," she'd explained when I gently suggested that maybe they should apply for their own emergency credit line. "Family helps family, and right now you're the one with available credit." The shift had been gradual but unmistakable. Emergency borrowing became convenience borrowing. "I'll just put this on Sarah's card and pay her back next week." Convenience borrowing became assumption borrowing. "Sarah won't mind covering this, she knows we're good for it." I tried to address the issue delicately, explaining that I was uncomfortable with how often the cards were being used and suggesting that maybe it was time for them to find other financial solutions. But my objections had been met with hurt feelings and accusations that I was being selfish with family. "We're not asking you for charity, Sarah," Mom had said during one particularly tense conversation. "We pay you back every time. What's the problem with helping your family when they need it?" "It's just that the cards are in my name," I tried to explain. "If something goes wrong, I'm responsible for the debt." "Nothing's going to go wrong," Lisa had reassured me. "We've never missed a payment. You're being paranoid." But something had gone wrong, just not in the way any of us had expected. The shopping spree had started last Wednesday when Mom had decided to treat herself, after months of dealing with Dad's health problems and the associated financial stress. She'd taken my cards to the mall for what she'd called a little retail therapy. "Just some new clothes and maybe a small piece of jewelry," she told me over the phone. "I've been so stressed lately and the doctor said I need to do things that make me happy." I'd been uncomfortable with the vague nature of the request, but Mom had already been dealing with so much stress that I hadn't wanted to add to her burden by making a big deal about credit card limits. "Just please keep it reasonable," I'd said. "And let me know how much you spend so I can budget for the payment." "Of course, honey. I'm not going to go crazy." But Mom's definition of not going crazy had turned out to be very different from mine. The first indication that something was wrong had come Thursday morning when I'd received an automated text message from my credit card company. "Alert! Your Visa card ending in 4738 has exceeded its credit limit. Please contact customer service immediately." I'd called the customer service number with growing dread, listening as the representative explained that my $5,000 limit card now had a balance of $5,847.23 due to over-limit fees and interest charges. "The charges were made yesterday at various retailers in Portland," the representative had explained. "Would you like me to read the transaction list?" 23 separate transactions. Nordstrom, Macy's, Kay Jewelers, Sephora, Williams-Sonoma, Coach, Michael Kors, and a dozen other high-end retailers. Mom had spent the entire day shopping, maxing out one card and then moving to the next. I'd immediately checked the balance on my second card and discovered that it, too, had been maxed out. Another $3,000 in charges at jewelry stores, department stores and specialty boutiques. $8,000 in a single day. More than Mom and Dad made in a month combined. I tried calling Mom immediately, but her phone had gone straight to voicemail. When I'd finally reached her that evening, she'd been defensive about the amount but unapologetic about the purchases. "I needed some things," she'd said. "And the salespeople were so helpful. They showed me how to maximize the rewards points and take advantage of store promotions." "Mom, you spent $8,000 in one day. That's more than both cards' credit limits combined. I know it seems like a lot, but everything was on sale. I actually saved us hundreds of dollars by shopping the clearance sections." "You saved us money by spending $8,000 we don't have? Don't be dramatic, Sarah. We'll pay it back over time just like always. It's not like the money disappeared. I bought useful things. Quality items that will last for years." I tried to explain that maxing out both cards had triggered automatic alerts that could draw unwanted attention to my financial profile, But Mom had dismissed my concerns as typical millennial anxiety about debt. Your generation is so worried about everything, she'd said. A little credit card debt never hurt anyone. We'll make the minimum payments and pay it off gradually. Mom, I can't carry $8,000 in credit card debt. It's not in my budget and it could cause problems with my employment background checks. What kind of background checks? You're a data analyst, not a government agent. If only she knew. The conversation had ended with Mom promising to return some of the items, though she'd been vague about which purchases might be returnable, and which ones she'd already started using. By Friday, it had become clear that Mom had no intention of returning anything significant. When I'd pressed her for specifics about her return plans, she'd gotten angry and accused me of trying to ruin her happiness. I finally bought myself some nice things after years of sacrifice, she'd said. And instead of being happy for me, you're making me feel guilty about it. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm trying to understand how we're going to handle $8,000 in unexpected debt. We'll figure it out. Families always do. But I'd known that figuring it out wasn't an option for someone in witness protection. The sudden spike in my credit card debt had already triggered automated monitoring alerts, and any unusual financial activity could potentially expose my location to the Kozlov family. The family dinner on Saturday had been called to address what Mom described as Sarah's overreaction to a simple shopping trip. The entire Chin family had gathered at Mom's house, ostensibly to celebrate Dad's continued recovery from his heart surgery, but really to discuss my unreasonable demands about the credit card debt. Sarah's being very dramatic about the whole thing, Mom had announced as she served dinner, showing off her new diamond earrings and tennis bracelet. It's like she doesn't trust her own family to pay back a simple loan. How much did you spend exactly? Grandma Chin had asked. About $8,000, Mom had said casually, as if discussing the price of groceries. But everything was on sale, so it was actually a great deal. Lisa had whistled appreciatively. $8,000? Mom, what did you buy? Things I needed, Mom had replied defensively. A new winter coat, some jewelry for special occasions, kitchen appliances we've been needing, skincare products, a few outfits for when your father and I go out to dinner. Sounds like you got some beautiful things, Grandma Chin had said supportively. Sarah should be happy to help family members enjoy life a little. All eyes had turned to me as I'd sat there trying to figure out how to explain my concerns without revealing the truth about my situation. I couldn't tell them that excessive credit card debt could trigger federal monitoring systems that might expose my location to Russian assassins. I couldn't explain that Sarah Chin was supposed to maintain a specific financial profile to avoid drawing attention from the very people trying to kill me. It's just a lot of money all at once, I'd said carefully. I'm worried about the impact on my credit score and my ability to make the payments. We'll help with the payments, Dad had assured me. We're not going to leave you stuck with debt that we created. But $8,000 is a significant amount for our family budget, I'd pointed out. Even with payment plans, it could take years to pay off. So what? Lisa had interjected. It's not like you're planning any major purchases anyway. You live like a monk, Sarah. A little credit card debt won't kill you. I deserve nice things after raising you, Mom had declared, gesturing to her new jewelry. I've spent 30 years putting my family first, and I finally decided to put myself first for once. She earned it, Lisa had added enthusiastically. Mom deserves to have beautiful things. The conversation had continued with various family members explaining why Mom's shopping spree was justified and why my concerns were unreasonable. Dad had talked about how much Mom had sacrificed during his medical crisis. Grandma Chin had shared stories about her own mother, who had never owned anything nice because she'd always put family expenses first. Lisa had argued that $8,000 wasn't really that much money when spread out over several years of payments. I'd stayed silent during their celebration, knowing that anything I said would only make me seem more selfish and unreasonable. They had no idea that they were potentially signing my death warrant by triggering federal monitoring systems with unauthorized credit activity. I understand your perspective, I'd finally said when they'd finished explaining why I should be grateful to help Mom enjoy life. I just need some time to figure out the best way to handle the payments. See, Mom had said triumphantly. Sarah's being reasonable now. She knows that family takes care of family. But I hadn't been feeling reasonable. I'd been feeling terrified about what the credit monitoring alerts might trigger and how quickly the marshals would respond to what they'd see as a major protocol violation. The call had come Monday afternoon while I was at my fake remote job, responding to emails about data analytics projects that didn't really exist. My secure phone had buzzed with the distinctive ringtone that meant Deputy Marshal Morrison was calling on an urgent matter. "Sarah, your cover's been blown by credit activity," he'd said without preamble. "We've got automated alerts showing massive unauthorized charges on both of your established credit accounts." My heart had stopped. What exactly does that mean? It means someone has been using your Sarah Chin identity to make purchases that don't match your established financial profile. $8,000 in luxury goods purchases in a single day. That kind of activity triggers automatic reviews that could expose your location. "It was my family," I'd said quickly. "They used my credit cards for shopping. It wasn't unauthorized. I gave them permission." "You gave them permission to blow your cover?" Morrison's voice had been incredulous. "Sarah, we've talked about this. Your financial profile is a crucial part of your protection. Any deviation from your established spending patterns could trigger alerts that lead the Kozlov family right to you. I didn't know they were going to spend that much. They told me it would be a small shopping trip." A small shopping trip doesn't max out 2 credit cards at luxury retailers. The algorithms are already flagging this activity as suspicious. "We're going to have to consider emergency relocation." Emergency relocation. The words had hit me like a physical blow. 3 years of building relationships, creating a life, becoming part of a family. All of it would disappear overnight because Mom had decided she deserved nice things. "How bad is it?" I'd asked. "Bad enough that we're already running threat assessments on your current location. If the Kozlov family has access to the same monitoring systems we do, and they probably do, they could be tracking the anomalous credit activity to your Portland address within days." What are my options? Option 1. Immediate emergency relocation to a new city with a new identity. Option 2. We try to contain the damage by creating a plausible explanation for the sudden spending increase and hope the Kozlov family doesn't notice the alerts. Neither option had been appealing. Emergency relocation would mean abandoning the Chin family without explanation, disappearing overnight and leaving them wondering what had happened to their cousin Sarah. But staying in Portland meant risking exposure to a crime family that had already demonstrated their willingness to kill federal witnesses. How long do I have to decide? 48 hours maximum. If we're going to relocate you, we need to move fast before any potential threats have time to mobilize. The call had ended with Morrison promising to contact me again within 24 hours with more detailed threat assessments and relocation options. I'd spent the rest of the afternoon staring at my computer screen, trying to process the reality that my family's shopping spree might have just signed my death warrant. The evening family meeting had been my last chance to salvage the situation without revealing the truth about my identity. I'd called an emergency gathering at Mom's house, explaining that I'd received some disturbing information about the credit card charges and needed to discuss immediate damage control. "What kind of damage?" Dad had asked when everyone was assembled in the living room. "The credit card companies are flagging the activity as suspicious," I'd said. "Large purchases at luxury retailers don't match my established spending patterns. They're threatening to freeze the accounts and launch fraud investigations." "Fraud investigations?" Lisa had looked worried. "We weren't committing fraud. You gave Mom permission to use the cards." "I know that, but the companies don't. From their perspective, it looks like someone stole my cards and went on a shopping spree. $8,000 in one day at high-end stores isn't consistent with my typical spending habits. So we'll explain it to them," Mom had said confidently. "We'll tell them it was authorized family purchases. It's not that simple. Once they open a fraud investigation, they start looking at all aspects of your financial profile. They could contact my employer, run credit checks, even involve law enforcement if they think the charges were truly fraudulent." "Law enforcement?" Grandma Chin had looked alarmed. "For shopping. For suspected identity theft and credit fraud. If they can't verify that the purchases were authorized, they have to treat it as a crime." The room had fallen silent as the family processed the potential consequences of what they'd thought was harmless shopping. "What do you need us to do?" Dad had asked finally. "I need you to return everything that can be returned immediately. And I need you to pay off both cards within the next week to minimize the time they stay maxed out." Return everything? Mom had protested. But I've already worn some of the clothes. And the jewelry was engraved. Mom, we're talking about potential fraud investigations. Your new earrings aren't worth risking criminal charges. Criminal charges seems a bit dramatic, Lisa had said. Surely the credit card companies don't prosecute family members for authorized purchases. They prosecute anyone they think is committing fraud. And right now, the data says someone stole my identity and maxed out my credit cards at luxury stores. That's textbook credit fraud. Mom had looked stricken. I didn't know it would cause all these problems. I thought it was just shopping. I know, Mom. But now we need to fix it before it gets worse. The next 24 hours had been a frantic effort to return as many purchases as possible and arrange payment for the remaining balances. Mom had managed to return about $3,000 worth of items, mostly clothes and accessories that still had tags attached. The jewelry and electronics were non-returnable, leaving us with about $5,000 in charges that needed to be paid immediately. Dad had emptied their savings account to cover $2,500 of the balance. Lisa had contributed $1,000 from her college fund. I'd used my own savings to cover the remaining $1,500, money that I couldn't really afford to lose but had no choice but to spend to protect my cover. Morrison had called Tuesday morning with an update on the threat assessment. The good news is that the rapid paydown of the balances has reduced some of the algorithmic flags, he'd said. The bad news is that the initial alerts have already been distributed to multiple monitoring systems. What does that mean for my safety? It means we're in a waiting period. If the Kozlov family has access to real-time credit monitoring, which they probably do, they've already seen the alerts. Now we find out whether they're actively tracking Sarah Chen's financial activity. And if they are, then you're potentially compromised and we need to move you immediately. The waiting had been the worst part. Every phone call, every knock at the door, every unexpected noise had sent adrenaline flooding through my system. I'd found myself constantly checking security cameras and varying my daily routines, falling back into the hypervigilant mindset that had characterized my first months in witness protection. The Chen family had been confused by my sudden anxiety and paranoia. They'd assumed I was stressed about the credit card situation and had tried to reassure me that everything would be fine. The cards are paid off, the accounts are back to normal and nobody got in trouble, Mom had said during one of her check-in calls. You can relax now, Sarah. But I couldn't relax because I knew that the damage might already be done. 3 years of careful cover maintenance, undone by a single day of luxury shopping. The confirmation had come Thursday afternoon. Morrison's call had been brief and direct. We've detected monitoring activity on your credit files, he'd said. Someone with sophisticated access has been running queries on Sarah Chen's financial history. The searches started immediately after the credit alerts went out. The Kozlov family? Most likely. The query patterns match methods we've seen them use before to track down relocated witnesses. So what happens now? Now we implement emergency relocation protocols. You have 6 hours to pack essential items. A transport team will pick you up at 11 p.m. tonight. 6 hours. Sir, they know where you are. We can't wait for a convenient time to move you. The final family dinner had been the hardest part of the entire ordeal. I'd sat around Mom's dining room table, listening to Dad talk about his recovery progress and Grandma Chen share stories about her garden, knowing that I would never see any of them again. They'd planned a small celebration for my upcoming birthday, not knowing that Sarah Chen would be dead by then, replaced by another carefully constructed federal identity in another carefully chosen city. We should go shopping for your birthday present next week, Lisa had suggested. I saw some things at the mall that you'd love. That sounds great, I'd replied, knowing that next week I'd be Rebecca Martinez again, or maybe some entirely new person with a new name and new history in a new city far from the people I'd come to love as family. And we need to start planning the 4th of July barbecue, Mom had added. Sarah, you're in charge of desserts this year. I'll start thinking about recipes, I'd said, another lie to add to the thousands I'd told over the past 3 years. As I'd hugged each of them goodbye that night, I tried to memorize their faces and voices, knowing that this was the last time Sarah Chen would exist. Tomorrow there would be another identity, another family, another carefully constructed life designed to keep me alive until the federal trials concluded. Thank you for everything, I'd told Mom as she'd walked me to my car. You've been amazing to me. We're family, Sarah. That's what family does. If only she knew that her shopping spree had just destroyed the only family I'd had for the past 3 years. The transport team had arrived at 11 p.m. sharp. Federal agents who'd efficiently helped me pack the few possessions that Sarah Chen could take to her new life. Everything else, the apartment, the job, the relationships, the memories, had been left behind for the second time in my life. Where are we going? I'd asked as we'd driven through the Portland night toward the airport. Phoenix, Agent Martinez had replied. You'll be Maria Rodriguez, a freelance graphic designer who just moved from San Francisco. Another name, another identity, another family that I'd eventually have to abandon when someone made another mistake that exposed my location. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom had said she deserved nice things after years of sacrifice. But her nice things had cost me the family I'd sacrificed everything to be part of. As the plane had lifted off from Portland, I'd looked down at the city lights and thought about the Chin family waking up to discover that their cousin Sarah had vanished without a trace. They'd probably think I'd been kidnapped or killed in an accident. They'd never know that their love and generosity had inadvertently triggered the monitoring systems that had forced me back into hiding. 3 years of Sarah Chen's life, erased by a single day of shopping. But that's the reality of witness protection. Your safety depends on the discretion of people who don't understand the consequences of their actions. And sometimes, the people you trust most are the ones who unknowingly put you in the most danger. Mom had been right about one thing. She did deserve nice things after years of sacrifice. She just didn't deserve them enough to risk my life for them. The $25,000 shopping spree had cost me everything I'd built as Sarah Chen. But Rebecca Martinez was still alive, and as long as I kept breathing, there was always the possibility of building another life in another city, with another family who might someday love me enough to put my life at risk with their kindness. That's the price of staying alive when people want you dead. Sometimes the very love that makes life worth living is the thing that makes it impossible to live.